Spirit Switchboard, airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3, New Orleans. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me here on Spirit Switchboard. I am your host, Kerrilynn, and we are broadcasting live from the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Network, 105.3 and 107.7 New Orleans. Today's guest, I am so thrilled to have this guest on today. So joining me today is Thomas Sewid, and he was raised with within the tribal culture of Sasquatch, and has had his own experiences based on years in the bush. So I knew when I was prepping to have this show that Sasquatch was one of the episodes that I wanted to do so badly. And when I did my research, I knew that I wanted to have a First Nations perspective. And when I was searching, I found you, Tom. So thank you so much for joining me here.
Having me on.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. Like I know that this is a topic I get super excited about. And when I found Sasquatch Island, your Facebook group, and I had read your rules of engagement, the rules of the page, and you run it like a ship. And it just reminded me of hanging out with my grandpa, and he was so rule oriented, and I listened, and I knew that the stories that you were going to share were stories that I wanted to hear and needed to be heard. So I'm just grateful that you agreed to come on. Can you share a little bit with our listeners?
Yeah, no, Sasquatch Island.
Yeah, tell me about Sasquatch Island.
Share a little bit. So Sasquatch Island, it was a Facebook group that started quite a few years ago, and I was like 20 members. I think there was that for a couple months, and it had a and that click the button. I was on Sasquatch Island and the administrator, and I seen that people needed to know more about them. And because I lived in the bush for decades, over 25 years, I lived out in the bush, doing my ecotourism operations, commercial fishing, which I call bush, the water world, and was a grizzly bear hunting guide and black bear hunting guide based on a yacht for 2 seasons every year. And then during the winter time, because I hated humans, I'd go watch logging camps all by myself when all the crew went home for the winter. And I love being in the bush, especially by myself, with a logging camp with a flush toilet and heat and all the food and boats to play with and machines to play with. So the bush world to me was, sort of my sanctuary. And while I was out there, I don't call them encounters. It's like when you come across a deer or a bear, do you all of a sudden go post that you had an encounter and all that? Then, it was just like Sasquatches to me, and still are, just another creature out there. And wasn't until when I met the common law wife of mine, Peggy, who lives here in Kent, Washington, just south of Seattle. When we got together in 2008 in May, I would come down that summer and visit here. And I knew I was around Peg in a square hole. I was in the urban environment. I despised it. The people were so disrespectful that I despised them and loathed them and didn't want to be around them. So I'd be looking out the window and Peggy would go, go back to Canada, go back to your bush world. I'll be here when you decide to come out. So I'd go back fishing, hunting, living, exploring, running ecotourism operations, and I'd come back to the city. And it took me in 2014. We've been together now for 4 years, and I was at this condo in Kent, Washington, and she introduced me to Finding Bigfoot and other Bigfoot shows. She said, use the remote and type in this. All of a sudden, movies and documentaries come up. So I started watching them, and she noticed that she's really interested in these Bigfoot Sasquatch shows. And then pretty soon I'm arguing with the TV, and I'm like, don't knock that tree with that stick. God forbid, you're an idiot. You knock on a tree, you're telling the Sasquatch to stop, turn around, go back where you came from. I don't want you here. And so Peggy came up and she's like, do you believe in Bigfoot, Sasquatch? I'm like, well, don't you? They're all over out there in the bush. And she goes, yeah. You believe them? I said, well, of course I believe in them. I've seen them. I've even spoken with them. I speak with them back when I lived in the bush, where it's in my region. From the elders that I interviewed and heard stories from through my lifetime, they said, to speak Kwakwa, language of the Kwakwaka'wakw people. And Kwakwaka'wakw, our Indian tribe, means the Kwakwala speaking people. So they said, just talk to them and they'll give you respect and move on. They know you're not a threat, but don't you ever, ever raise a gun or point it towards them. And don't you ever think of killing one, because they're the other. And we respect them and they respect us. So when I was in bush, and I like telling people, I'm like, you see people out camping, hunting, and they got a big roaring fire. Well, back when you're living in bush and you're living in an existence where you might be out there for weeks, months on end, like I was, I ran out of cigarettes, I ran out of coffee, and light. I don't have a 50-pound pack. I have basically a 15-pound pack, and a rifle and a shotgun, some knives, fishing gear, tarp, a blanket, and I dress in rain gear and a Mustang floater coat, which keeps you warm. And when you wrap yourself in a blanket tarp and put a small one up above so the rain doesn't hit you, you don't have a tent. And I never stayed in a tent until I was probably in my early 40s, because I want to see and smell everything when I'm sleeping or trying to sleep. Right. So when you're out there, and because you're living that hunter-gatherer existence, you're living like a Sasquatch. As you walk, you're reaching and you're grabbing, you're bending over and rolling rocks over, or you're ripping logs apart, and you're eating the protein that you find. And, you're just living like a Sasquatch. Well, you don't want to smell like smoke when you're walking at daytime, and you're not going to come across that animal you want to shoot with your gun or your slingshot to eat, because, those are the occasions that I would use a fire is when I got meat. So most of the time I never had a campfire at night, and you'd hear that click, click, crack. And then you get that smell, that wallish yachbala, that big stink. And you knew what it was. And that's what I just say. Yo, weeksas. Hello, I don't know who you are, Sasquatch. How are you doing? And sometimes you'd hear a mumble or a chatter, and they would move off. And that's what I meant by speaking with them. So to me, was I having interactions with them? Well, definitely. Was it at the level of Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall? No. But I was still coming across them. So to me, I just look at them as the perfect humans, because when you look at the reports and stories, the indigenous people of Turtle Island, North America, what I call Sasquatch Island, and you hear numerous tribes refer to the cannibal giants, the hairy giants that are cannibals. Watch out for the Tonahua, the woman of the woods, she misbehaving children and eat them. So you hear all these stories about Sasquatches eating humans, young and old, and the term cannibal. Well, if a black bear or a wolf eats a human, we don't call them a cannibal. We call them a man killer, a human killer, or what they are, a carnivore. Why is it called Sasquatches cannibals? So it tells you right there, the indigenous people knew that the Sasquatch was just another type of human. And, we take for granted nowadays that, you can walk in anywhere and people from all over the world live with us or visit here.
Right.
Well, I remember as a kid, the first time I seen someone that was from India that was a Sikh. Me and my cousin thought he was a genie. We were just kids. We were on a ferry going to Vancouver from Vancouver Island. We'd come out of our Indian Reserve, which was an isolated island in northern Vancouver Island. And here we see this Sikh gentleman with a turban. And we thought we saw a genie because we'd never saw someone of East Indian descent. So that was just 1968, 1970. So now we look at humans. We have people from all over the world, but when we really think about it, boy, is there a big difference of this. We have the ones from the Norwegian area, skin, blue, blonde hair, and then gingers. Then we have Australia, the indigenous Aboriginals, and how they look compared to someone from Africa, or compared to someone from Asia, or compared to, someone from England. The diversity of the human species is diverse. And yet we look at the Sasquatch and go, what is it? What could the Sasquatch be? It's just a big human that's hairy, has scent glands under their arms, which we have, but they can expel a stench when they want to say, turn around, get away from me. I don't want you near me. And they have nocturnal vision. Well, some people who don't know the sciences and haven't read their share of National Geographics in their lifetime, they might not understand that the human species has adapted to evolution, like the Africans and Aborigines who have very dark skin because of the amount of sun they have. And then we have the people from the Himalayas and from the Andes who have larger lung capacities because they live over 10,000 feet for many generations. And we have the Inuit Arctic who have large of the oil they eat in their diet from whales, walrus, and seal. So when you look at a Sasquatch and it's bigger, hairier, it's got scent glands under its armpits that it can expel, and they have nocturnal vision. And then when you've been as close as I have to Sasquatches, some closest was probably 8 feet face to face, 20 feet at one time, 60 feet another time. All you're seeing is a human. And, when you look at the art and depictions of people that saw a Sasquatch and they draw it or paint it or get someone to do it, the only difference you're seeing is a pronounced philtrum. The distance from the top of the lip to the base of the nose is very pronounced on the Sasquatch. Aside from that, the nose is similar to ours, the ears, the mouth, the lips, the teeth, the eyes. A lot of people say, oh, they have canines. They're like a werewolf. No, they don't. They have canines like us. But yeah, some humans have very pronounced canines. So maybe some Sasquatch have pronounced canines as well. And and that's the way I look at Sasquatch. It's just, to me, the humans of the night, the perfect human.
Yeah. And that's how I know that I've shared this with you. My grandpa was a hunter and a trapper and a bush guy. He was a bush man, and he used to say that old trappers never die; they just smell like it. Like you smell like the bush, and that's where he loved being, was in the bush. And he had this little shanty in behind the house, and I would sit with him when he was skinning hides and stretching them and tanning, and he was doing all of those things, and he would just share stories. And one of the things that he taught me, because I grew up in Northern Ontario, there's lots of Sasquatch stories that come out of Northern Ontario, but it was bears. So bears is sort of my introduction to Sasquatch, because he said, we're in their territory. That bear is watching you well before you know that it's even around. He's seeing you. So you just make yourself loud and you just tell him, thanks for being here. You keep talking loud. I'm sorry I'm in your space. I'm just walking through, and be loud in between your house and our house, and you'll get here just fine. And so that's how I've always saw a Sasquatch, is that they're probably seeing us well before like stealth mode, right? They're seeing us well before we even see them. And we're in their
Oh,
space.
definitely.
Like we have to respect they've been here long before us, and respecting the land and the connection to the land, and not being disrespectful to them or to the land.
Well, that's very long there. They've been there as long as we, the indigenous people of Sasquatch Island. So again, that's what I mean. They're just another tribe. They're just a tribe that despises us, hates us, and fears us. So they keep their distance. But to a lot of the native tribes, especially on southern Vancouver Island and the mainland here, what they call Pacific Northwest, Vancouver into Washington State, they refer to their Sasquatch as the Watcher, because the Sasquatch is always watching. And that's why when you look at my Kwakwaka'wakw native art, like that's what it is. I do numerous Sasquatch designs, and for T-shirts and coffee mugs and shower curtains and bath mats, but some of my designs, I'll put a reflection in the pupils of my wife silhouette, the ponytail, backpack, a walking stick, and it's reflecting Peggy, and that's what it's watching. So
Michelle,
that Sasquatch is the watcher. They're always watching us.
Sorry, I'm just interrupting you. I didn't mean to do that. Michelle is asking, we just have a question, and she's asking if Sasquatch make themselves known to everyone, or if they feel out certain humans where they may feel safe, or do they get accustomed to certain people? Like, did Sasquatch get accustomed to you because you were in the bush so long?
Oh, yeah. So there's a design there. And that's one with a reflection. You see how its hands on the tree branch and it's behind the bushes?
Yeah.
The watcher. What happens is when you go to the bush and the Sasquatch grabs and looks, they're watching you. If you're wearing REI mountain equipment, really bright colors, and you got a backpack with a hose coming out of it for your bear bells, and you got bear spray, and you're dressed like you're on a catwalk, but you're in the forest, and advertising all the manufacturers. You know, they look and go, look at that person slipping, stumbling. They're looking where their feet are step instead of walking and flowing like the breeze, and knowing that as they look ahead of us, they see where the next 14 steps are going to go, and watch out for that root and watch out for that rock. That human is very uncomfortable. So the watcher just puts up the branch or leaves, or else they stand there and make themselves seen because they want to scare the bejesus out of that human, because they're not comfortable in the bush environment. So, but when you get someone who's going there with camouflage clothing on and hats and a gun and a knife and a backpack, right away the watcher looks and goes, hunter, disappear. They're a threat. That hunter has a gun. That hunter has a knife. That person is hunting. So the Sasquatch leaves. But sometimes the Sasquatch will look and see me and someone like me and pull a branch down even further and look and see that that human is bush dancing, flowing, moving with the environment.
That was the term I wanted to ask you.
Bush dancer. And then it pulls the branch down further. It lets it go. And as a branch snaps like that, it turns and it walks away. The snapping branch. And as you look, and there's no bird, no bear cub, no cougar cub, no raccoon. What was it? Well, it was the Sasquatch letting you know by the bouncing bough. I saw you. I respect you. I turned and went the other way. I expect you to do the same. Carry on. I won't bother you. You don't bother me. One time I had that happen, and I ran at the bouncing bough, and I broke through the edge of the canopy, and I got under the canopy of the forest, and there was this big Sasquatch just with his back to me, just loping along, walking up the hill. So that's what the bouncing bough is. So being a bush dancer, that you're comfortable, the Sasquatch is going to give you respect. And that's what I'm getting at everything. And that's why people say, well, how come I never see a Sasquatch? I'm a prospector. I'm a logger. I'm a timber surveyor. I'm a firefighter. I'm always in bush mushroom picking, hiking. Well, because you're a bush dancer. You're a threat to them if they push you or you push them. And that's why they respectfully, and then ask them, you ever notice that bouncing bow? Come to think about it, that's happened about 3 or 4 times mushroom picking. Then they realized, like, your eyes just lit up, that they were close to Sasquatch.
Yeah. I heard an interview, I listened to an interview that you did, and you also said people are not getting down low enough. They're not squatting and looking underneath the foliage. They're looking up. So they're missing
They're
seeing
looking
their
not up, they're looking straight across. They're looking
right.
what's out there. And what you got to do is, we all know what bushes and trees are like. It's canopy, goes up, stems, and then canopy. Well, if it's, scrub bush, you got to drop down on your knees and look through the opening, through the trunks of the branches and little trees, and you'll see their legs, their feet. And then the other one is, yes, do look up. How often do we go in the forest and stop and spin? So, you talk to people, and especially the fellow indigenous people I talk to that are bushers, and they talk about all of a sudden they got that smell. They felt like they're being watched. Well, we don't question or forget about our gut feeling. We move on it. So all of a sudden you feel like you're being watched. You're being watched. So they'll stop and they'll look around, and all of a sudden it's when I looked up, they're in a tree 50 feet up with a Sasquatch standing there looking down at me. Oh, what'd you do?
So people need to trust
I just nodded at him and smiled, turned away.
So it's trusting that intuition. When you feel like you're being watched, you probably are.
Absolutely. And then, I don't believe in holistic, what I call woo Sasquatches, even them cloaking, mind speaking, turning into orbs, jumping in UFOs and flying around. I don't believe in any of that, or shape shifting. I haven't seen it, and I've seen Sasquatch many times, so I've never experienced it. I don't follow that path, but I do follow infrasound. It's a scientific proven thing that tigers and other animals can do to stun an animal, hit them with such a deep, low frequency of sound that deer gets all confused, like a panic attack. Right. And the next thing you know, pounce. It's food. It's going to get pooped out the next day. So infrasound I've never experienced it, but reading into it and studying it a little bit, and you hear people talk. And I've seen one of my investigators, actually, she's my producer with Wildwood Woman Media, Victoria Williams, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Native Indian. But anyway, she just all of a sudden had this panic attack as we were setting up cameras, trail cameras, and audio devices and so forth. All of a sudden, she just started freaking and peeking. I was just like, settle down. And I think she was hit. I think we were hit with infrasound, but she was the one that tweaked on it and was susceptible to what that Sasquatch was doing, hitting us with infrasound.
Right before the show started, I had to dash out really quick, and I had to, because long weekend, right? Not wanting to have to leave the house much, deal with people. So I was grabbing pet food for the dogs. And when I went in, I was telling them about having you on the show today. And it turns out she was from Thunder Bay, Northern Ontario, and she shared a Sasquatch story while I was buying dog food today. So there was a couple points I wanted to make about that. One of them was she shared this story, but she said that whole thing that you're just, the woo-woo aspect, that they saw it, that they were shocked, and then it just disappeared. It just disappeared. So in her head, it was dimensional, moving from one spot to another. And I've heard you talk about that, where it's like shock or like a trauma trigger. Their brain can't process what they've just experienced, so they go somewhere else in their thoughts. Can you share a bit about that?
It's like fishermen. Our arms aren't long enough to tell you how big that fish was that got away, because the story gets stretched. We exaggerate, and we believe our own BS and bunk. And pretty soon our arms aren't long enough to show how big the fish was that got away. It's a human trait characteristic. So we don't hear people who have had traumatic experiences like the war or an airplane crash, car accident, rape, or someone who's been sodomized. We don't hear them standing on the soapbox all the time what their trauma was and how it happened and how it affected them. It's just the odd whiner human that talks about PTSD and all these different things. The majority of humans forget about it, and that's what I call a mental band-aid. We get so scared to hell that something clicks in our head to suppress that trauma. So you look at Sasquatch, seeing a Sasquatch, well, it's the most traumatic thing you're ever going to experience, next to a wounded grizzly bear coming at you at 20 feet away. I'll tell you that, because I've been there, and I've even been hit by a grizzly bear's paw when they're injured. And that's scary stuff. One evening, I looked at the tide book. I knew what was going on. And I said, hey, geez, I got about 45 minutes before dark where I'm going to have a really low tide rising. I think I'll go to this bay where my camper or my chair and my little addition, but up in there that summer. I'll go there and I'll just walk with my hip boots on, towing my 18-foot aluminum speedboat with the motor up in the shallow water, a foot deep, and I'm going to pick cockles, a type of shellfish, a clam, and I'm going to get a feed of cockles for dinner tonight. So I get down to this bay and I'm doing that, and it's probably around, I guess, maybe going on to 8:30 at night. It's early fall and late summer, I mean. And then I looked over, and all I can recollect is I saw a really long-legged black bear walk on the beach into the water. The next thing you know, I woke up at around 11 o'clock at night, about 2 miles away with my speedboat, sleeping in it, tied to a kelp forest that they attach to the rocks. They're called bull kelp. It's good anchorage. Anyway, you go tie up to the bull kelp, like tie into a tree, and you don't drift away. And it's foggy, it's pitch black, and I'm freaking cold now because I'm all in fog dew. And I'm like, how the hell did I get here? So I, started my boat up, looked around, figured out where I might possibly be, and went with my compass and inched my way through the fog until I saw a tree that I recognized. And I'm like, oh, I know where I am. And I ran my compass courses and got back to my, I was living on then. And anyway, I got home and I went to sleep. But next day, I'm like, what the hell happened to me? I saw that black bear, and then the next thing you know, I woke up in the kelp forest 3 hours later. What the heck? Well, everyone goes, go get hypnotized. I think you saw a Sasquatch. And I'm like, are you kidding me? These skeletons I got in my closet? The last thing I want is someone hypnotizing me and opening my closet door and all my skeletons spill out and get recorded. I don't know. I ain't doing that. And so something happened to me, and I can only speculate, but I think I saw a Sasquatch, something with that incident traumatized me, that all of a sudden I just, I can't say I went into the woo-woo, but I definitely, all I can recollect is I saw a long-legged black bear. And my friend, who was a clam digger back in the day, maybe 15, 20 years ago, clam digger Dan, he didn't believe in Sasquatches. Yet this guy would disappear in the dark and dig clams for a living during the fall, winter, and early spring out in my traditional territories off northeastern Vancouver Island, middle of Timbuk nowhere, where hardly anyone lives. And one time he came to me and I was digging at this place, and all of a sudden I saw this really long-legged black bear walk into the light of my lantern as I'm on my knees digging for clams. And I'm like, oh, you saw a Sasquatch? I did not see no Sasquatch. That was a long-legged black bear. And so to me, that's the mental band-aid. And if you want to look at reference for that on Sasquatch, there's a book called Afloat in Time. It's about a Jippo logging company family back in the early 1900s to the early 1960s, how they lived in the Central Coast around Bella Coola. And in that point, Dan's father and his brothers, they out and go hunting, mountain goer. And they heard gunshots, bang, 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 bang. And all of a sudden their uncle, they couldn't believe how fast he made it from way up the mountain where they heard the gunshots down to where the other guys were. And he was freaked out, but he said he saw the world's largest mountain goat. And it scared him so bad that he shot warning shots as he ran away from there. He saw a
Right.
Sasquatch. He didn't see a giant mountain goat. He saw a Sasquatch, and that mental band-aid kicked in. So when we hear about Sasquatches where all of a sudden they're there a minute and all of a sudden poof, just disappeared. They must have went through a porthole or cloaked. Yeah. No. Just go to YouTube and look at feral hogs, pigs, and watch how quick those pigs can be walking, and all of a sudden they scent or see that human, and all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. Or else they're running from someone shooting a helicopter, and all of a sudden they're going that way, this way, and that way, and next thing you know, boom, they're going 180. It's amazing how fast those feral hogs and other animals can turn direction and disappear into the foliage, and it almost looks like they cloaked. And, being a hunting guide for over 25 years, I've seen some pretty amazing things where I've had deer not 30 feet from me hiding behind huckleberry bushes, and my Indian client, I'm like, can't these big deer shoot at 30 feet away? His wife, he saw it, but he couldn't see it. And then all of a sudden, poof, the deer disappeared, ran into the slough under the forest canopy. I ran after it with him. And I'm like, right there's the deer's neck and his head. He's looking back at us over his shoulder. Take him. The guy couldn't see it. And that deer just walked and disappeared into the bush. It cloaked, so to speak. So a lot of people about the woo-ism Sasquatch don't know bugger all about the bush and the animals and other critters out there. And all of a sudden they come up with these hypotheses, speculation, bunk things about UFO flying, portal jumping, cloaking, mind speaking, shift changing Sasquatches. And no, it doesn't happen. Not from my experience.
So Susan, along that same line, is asking, can Sasquatch have the same effect on you as a skinwalker would? So
I wouldn't know, because we don't have skinwalkers in my region of coastal British Columbia, but I am half Cree, and I know my mom has taught me quite about Wheatago, what people call Wendigo, and I believe that, we know. And in Cree, my Cree dialect, it's Wheatago for Wendigo, and she's
Oh, we kind of froze there for a little second. Could you share that again with us?
Yeah, being half Cree, my mother's full-blooded Cree, and Wheatago, what they call with some people, but she's told it, and from my end, she used to always say it was like what they call a skinwalker. It can change into different things. I'm like, oh. So me and some investigating and researching, we talked to the elders, talked to her family members and her brothers and sisters. Half of them are still alive, and they're all in their 80s and 90s. So we got a lot of oral history into it. And then I said, look, I know you're a devout Christian and practicing. So let's put the Christianity aside for a second, and let's just be Cree and talk about what you know and what you heard when you're younger. So she offered some good insight into Wheatago or skinwalkers. And then when I questioned her and I questioned other elders about it, all of a sudden I started looking at the pictures and I started asking questions based on the pictures of Wheatago, how it has horns on its head, stinky cape, a club sometimes. It's really skinny and gaunt and everything. It's taller than the end. It's got hair, so forth. And I thought to myself, okay, I've lived like a Sasquatch for months on end. I hated humans so bad at times I'd disappear for months into the forest. And I know what it's like to look at humans, see the thermoses, the coffee, sandwiches, and see them. And I know I was out of cigarettes and coffee for months. And I wanted to go down there and say, hey, I'm Tom. Can I have a smoke? Can I have a cup of coffee? Can I have half your sandwich? I want to push the branch up, turned and disappeared because I hate buys and loads of the humans. And I've been out there in bush at times where I've been super hungry, like days without food. And I wasn't getting enough protein. And you know what it's when you get hungry, take a lot of chances. So when I think of Weendigo, I think that was diseased, old, tapewormed up, arthritis, sore, everything Sasquatch that's on its last days. And all of a sudden, how hard would it be for a Sasquatch to rip the hide off a deer or an elk and it's all stinky and everything, put it on, and then grab a deer skull with horns and tie it to its head and grab a gnarly old stick, and with its hunched back and feeble body as it sees humans, it goes out and scares the humans or grabs the weakest of the humans that it can catch and eat it, because we know Sasquatches are cannibals in some regions. And then, it's dressing all terrible with the deer horns and the stinky cape and the stick because it wants to put fear into the humans, because it is so emaciated or whatever from the tapeworms and the arthritis and other diseases it has, and it can't hunt and harvest as, so it's all skinny and gaunt and has to make itself more scary, kind of like animals when they put their hackles up and fluff their hair and their tail. What they're telling you is, I'm scared of you, but am I looking mean because I want you to turn and walk away? And I think Weendigo is.
That's
had a story, my opinion, and everyone.
No, I appreciate it. And I understand where you're coming from with that too, because it makes sense. Like, you shared a story about your cousin picking blueberries with her baby.
Oh, she's good. Yeah, she's crazy. And they call it the Pines in the Mistawassus Indian Reserve of central Saskatchewan, where my family comes from. West to the Pines. She just had a baby. She said, one of those real cryy babies. But anyway, she was picking and she had to move the slap of a mosquito, like kids, like a bed of moss. So she goes, I'd be put my baby. So she put the baby down, and it's yowling and screaming and everything. And she's picking her blueberries, and it's low bush blueberries, so they're low. So she's picking, and all of a sudden there's her baby and these big hands, and they're behind. Like, take your damn baby. Put that screaming brat in my bed. I said, what'd you do? She goes, grab my baby. And I hunched down and I started crying. And when I looked up, the Sasquatch was gone.
Because really, she was in their space. And if they are like humans of the night, right? As you say, the humans of the night, then they're going to be sleeping during the day and not wanting a crying baby in their space.
Exactly. Yeah. Sort of like us when we're hungover and want to sleep in.
I don't know. I've not really had a whole lot of hangover experiences, but I know what I'm like when I'm hangry. When I'm overtired and hungry, I can be pretty nasty.
Oh, I thought Peggy's like, she goes, Joe Pesci, Pickers real quick, hangry.
There's a great picture of you and Peggy on the Sasquatch Island group standing beside the wooden foot cutouts. So what's come? You have there's a festival. Yeah, there's a festival coming up.
This coming weekend, starting on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, is the Forks, Washington second annual Sasquatch Conference. and I'll be attending it again. I was there last year. I work with who's hosting it. They're called SasquatchTheLegend.com. You can go to their website, and they have a store that I painted the Sasquatch murals on and their logo. I painted a Sasquatch side profile carrying a t-shirt that says SasquatchTheLegend.com on a coat hanger, and other designs. But they sell a lot of my art and other things. Phenomenal. To me, it's one of the two that are both tied for best Sasquatch built museums, stores in Washington State. Cliff Barrickman having the other one in Boring, Oregon. And the festival is going to be great. I'm actually going to be at the store. I do a presentation there Saturday morning, and I'm always walking around. My mom just made me a new tunic. I'm not going to showcase it until tonight. I'll be sewing buttons on it. Maybe the next day or two I'll finish it and I'll display it. But I might hold off until the festival and say, here's the new tunic with a side profile and a picture of a tunic Sasquatch. But the festival is going to be great. I got a 74-inch or almost 7-foot plywood laminated 2 sheets together Bigfoot that I'm painting white in the garage, and it's going to look like a big plaster cast. Then I have to put the SasquatchLegend.com logo on it, and that'll be a sign hanging up above their store. But for the festival, we won't have time to hang it, but we're going to screw it to the wall of the store, so you can go get your picture standing beside it, or with Cliff Barrickman, or Mark Marcel, or the Olympic Project guys, or Marsha K. Moore, or myself, or Peggy. You know, everyone likes to get their pictures for their Facebook with the. That's right. I just call it what we are, Sasquatch celebrities.
Do you find that, like the indigenous, the First Nation perspective has been missing? Do you find there's more involvement now? Like that
there's more and more, because Indians are very competitive. So a lot of people seeing me front and center about Sasquatches over the last 5 years. Indians suffer from crab syndrome. They'll never pat you on the back and say, "Oh, Tom, it's really getting people to wreck Sasquatches and never kill them." And you're getting our indigenous perspective out there. They'll never do that. They'll sit there and go, "Who does he think he is, big shot? I can do better than him. I'm going to go to a conference and tell him that." That's how Indians are. That's just what we suffer with, crab syndrome. Not me. I'm a indigenous entrepreneur, so I don't suffer from crab syndrome. But you're always being dragged down. So yeah, there's more and more Indians getting into the game because of crab syndrome. Yeah. They want to be better than the other Indian, which is good. You know, we're warriors and come from warrior stock. So, you know, you always got to do battle and be better than the other person. So it's just an Indian way. I call it Indianitis.
Michelle,
the conferences that I go to, it's all about educating. Yeah.
Fabulous. So Michelle is just asking, can you speak about the Sasquatch gaze, mostly about the eyes? You know, when there are people that you can see into their eyes and speak stories about their soul, is there an experience you can speak about the face and the eyes of a Sasquatch?
Despise us, loathe us, fear us, hate us. Mm-hmm. That's what I've looked in, you know, the 3 occasions I have had that eyeball to eyeball with a Sasquatch. That's what I saw. I saw that, exactly that, you know. Now I don't blame them. You know, let's look around what we've done to our environment, their environment.
Right. And that was where I'd like to go. Well, yeah, where I'd like to go next. There's so much division and ego that divides everybody, where they're bringing ego into the play instead of really removing the ego and making it about the community and learning and educating and sharing knowledge and pushing those boundaries to learn more. They bring ego to the table and make it about you know, instead of joining forces and learning together, they bring their ego in. Can you talk about that?
I remember I wrote a ballad one time in high school, writing when I was in high school, and studied it afterwards. But when I wrote this poem, it was about a Zeppelin with a sailing ship tied underneath. And the captain was screaming to his crew as they were going into this supposed utopian community. And land this black Zeppelin and let's spread our plague. There never shall be and never will be this place called utopia. So to me, being a Kwakwaka'wakw Hamatsa, we're just underneath the chieftains. In the old days, we were the right-hand men of the chief and still are, and very fierce warriors. So, and I've been trained traditionally on that. I've taken courses on how to be a negotiator so that I'm very aggressive. I've become the human pit bull when I negotiate. So I have no hope for humanity to ever create holistic balance and harmony within our species of a utopian world. It's not. We're the stupidest critter on this planet. We're nothing but hairless, poo-tossing apes. And that being said, that's why I call Sasquatch the perfect human. There's so much we can learn from them. I've lived out there with them. I've been in peace and total respect back and forth. And I've never experienced that here in humanity. And I never will. It's a fallacy. It's a falsehood. It's never going to happen. So with the Sasquatch community, Stephen Major, he's having a conference in Spokane called the Spokane Bigfoot Roundup on the 17th of June weekend. He held it in Spokane deliberately on the same day that Medellin Falls, just north of him by an hour drive up by the Canadian border, is going to have their third annual Sasquatch conference. He did that out of spite. He did that because he's an evil, pathetic, mean little creature. And I'm working with Medellin to try to increase their ticket sales, and it's working because I'm reaching out to my fellow indigenous and saying, hey, we got up of mostly indigenous performers and speakers. Well, I don't want to go to Medellin Falls and set it down to Bubba Redneck Stephen Majors is doing Spokane Roundup with all the other Bubbas. So that's my way of dealing with the unethical egomaniacs within our society. So what do we do on a commercial fish boat when someone gets egomaniac and starts belittling his fellow crew? No different than what we do in a fish camp or a hunting camp or out in the forest logging camps. Fish come out and you beat the bejesus out of them. That's what humans do. That's our instinct. And it's the only way to deal with those egomaniacs. We can't beat them physically, so we have to beat them with the text entails. We have to get on the computers and our cell phones, say what needs to be said, and make them accountable for their actions. We have investigators that are putting stuff out that is totally respectful for the indigenous humans of that traditional territory where that person is supposedly investigating, coming out with these fake audio videos and making up all this BS, but it is also so very disrespectful to the Sasquatches. And what's the number one rule we're supposed to do for Sasquatch is respect them and they will respect us. So how do we get that respect within our society of Sasquatch enthusiasts, investigators? Well, number one, as soon as you hear someone say, I'm a Sasquatch researcher, that's an egomaniac. And they're the ones we need to put in their places and say, hey, come on now, pull back the reins and pull the gears down a bit here and slow down a bit and settle down, because what you're doing is wrong. It's really bad. And I have 3 people that I no longer will speak with in the Sasquatch community. You know, I named one of them Stephen, the other one's Todd Neese, and there's another guy here in just north of Seattle, just because their egos got the better of them. And what are we supposed to do when we take counseling for anger management and try to, your life's not going down a good path, so you want to correct it? Well, you go get counsel. I've done my share of counseling, and what's one of the first things they tell you? Remove the toxic people from your life. Yeah. So within our Sasquatch community, there's toxic people. And what do we need to do as a society? Because we know there's never going to be that society called utopia. Well, we got to throw the trash out. And that's those egomaniac, unethical pigs that are within our community. Right. And that's just, trust me, it works. It works in a bush camp, works in a logging camp, works on a fish boat. It works, period.
Can you tell me about Campbell River and how the artwork and how the story is told through art, how that history is told through art in Campbell River?
Campbell River and Alert Bay too. Communities that have the highest concentration of wood Sasquatch on Earth. So in Campbell River, you'll see the First Nations burial ground behind Superstore, and you'll see the memorial poles. That's what we call the ones raised for in honor of a person who passed. And one of them has a big chonacha at the bottom with outstretched arms, big breckered, sleepy looking eyes. And then you drive down to the end of the road, it's a spit peninsula where the airplanes are, and there's a carving of a chonacha with a basket and a baby in the back. And right. In town, there's other depictions of chonacha or Sasquatch paintings, carvings. The museum's filled with it. They got a feast dish that's got to be 12, 14 feet long, big cedar log, hollowed out belly and legs, and it's a big Sasquatch lying on her back, and it's a traditional feast dish from the times of old. But if you go native people and you were to knock on their door and say, hey, can I see your regalia of chonacha? Oh, sure. They're not going to do it, but if you could, you would see probably well over 100 depictions of chonacha, the mask. And if you go to their chief, their family's potlatch, you'll see an experience, an encounter an ancestor had with a Sasquatch, a chonacha, be brought to life in dance and song at the potlatch with the dancer with the mask. I got them here behind me. If anyone's wondering why there's so many cardboard boxes, they're filled with wood bowls made on a lathe. I got over 1,000. I paint native designs on them and sell them. But anyway, the Campbell River and Alert Bay have all of these carvings of chonacha. It's just amazing. Like, you know, if you're a Sasquatch investigator, you have to make your way to Vancouver. Actually, start in Seattle, see the welcoming pole that's downtown, and art museum, the chonacha carvings, and a Burt museum with the chonacha carvings and other Sasquatch carvings, and then make your way up to Vancouver to see the native art galleries, the Museum of Apology, the totem pole, Stanley Park, chonacha Sasquatch is carved all over. Take the ferry to Victoria, go to the Royal British Columbia Museum, stop in Duncan, an hour north on the highway, the City of Totems, and see more Sasquatch carvings. Continue up to Campbell River and see all the Sasquatch carving Bay and Port Hart. So back of the woods had all kinds of Sasquatch carvings, and it's sort of like when you watch King Kong and the one that was done in the 70s, and you see all the carved depictions of Kong and all these things. That's what Vancouver Island's like. You just got to open your eyes and all of a sudden go, hey, there's another chonacha. Oh, there's a chonacha carving.
And then ask the questions and listen. Like ask to know more about it. Ask to learn, because the stories are there and need to be heard.
Best thing to do if you're interested in Sasquatch, go to SasquatchIsland.com. Take an expedition with me. You can take the Seattle or the Vancouver Sasquatch Safari, where I bring you to the museum, gifts and art galleries, and show you all the carvings. Explain it. We're up for $150 for 12 hours, and I'll go out in the bush and teach you investigating and see if we can see something on the floor and audio devices, and parabolic listening devices. Or you can take the multitude of other expedition kayak trips for Sasquatch, living like a Sasquatch, where you go one-on-one in the bush with yourself. You get a small dry bag of food and your cell phone, and it's put away, and we go into the bush with absolutely no food, and you live like a Sasquatch, meaning if you don't harvest it, you ain't eating. And I teach you everything on that, and you're going to be full. You're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe how much seafood we ate today. And then we got trips on yachts, night trips.
For those of us who are just joining, you're listening to the Spirit Switchboard. We are broadcasting live with the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Network, 105.3 and 107.7. And we have Tom Sewid on talking about Sasquatches today. So I saw that you do the expeditions, and I also saw there was the cruise. There's a cruise coming up in September as well too. The Alaskan
I keep forgetting
cruise.
about that. Yeah, it's the first ever Alaska Bigfoot cruise. It's on a full-on Royal Caribbean cruise ship. A company bought. They do Sasquatch conventions, but they took a chance and bought 200 cabins on this cruise ship, and guys that they Pallidi, Meldrum, and others to be announced. Well, almost 9 months ago, I seen the Facebook post on. Emailed right away. You need to take Tom and Peggy because we're going to show the First Nations perspective. I'm a commercial fisherman.
Yeah.
I've been all through the coast, so I'm going to be pointing out where Sasquatch encounters took place. At nighttime, I'm going to be up on the top deck with my flirs as we go through these narrow channels, and we're going to be looking at the side hills and the log slashes and beaches, and probably be the first cruise ship in history to document a Sasquatch on shore at night as we travel, because I know where they're going to be, and I know where those choke points are because I traveled them all my life on a boat.
Right. And do they have seasonal migration, right? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, in the summertime, some of the places we're going to in the summertime, they're going to be right on those, like in northern British Columbia's coast. We know as alpine, where you look at a mountain and see up 4,000 feet, the trees and it's scrubland up there, grasses and meadows. Well, in northern British Columbia's coast, it's like that in some places 100 feet up from the beach. It's all of a sudden like an alpine. So can you imagine being on a cruise ship elevated with a FLIR? Like, I'm going to be able to zip in and record them and bingo them, no problem, because the times I travel on other boats, I wasn't elevated 100 feet up. I was down at water level in a wheelhouse looking in a bright radar. Now I'm going to be up on a deck with my FLIRs and everything, drinking a beverage. Remember, I'm working. I can only drink non-alcoholic beverages.
But you've posted a lot of really great videos, like both on that group page, but on YouTube as well too, of things and experiences that you've had.
Oh yeah, that definitely go to my YouTube channel, Sasquatch Island. You know, like I'm taking people, but mainly cell phone video camera, but now I've bought a big camera. But anyway, the YouTube channel Sasquatch Island is out there in Timbuk flipping nowhere, where most people will never get. But I was there on a commercial fish boat, and you're going to be hearing the reports that taking place out there. Like, it's just like, I'm so lucky that, when you read like John Green's book, Sasquatch, The Apes Among Us, I think it was from the 1970s, one of the best Sasquatch books going, if you can find it. It's actually in reprint now, so you can find it on Amazon and that. But you read about Buttedale and these places where Sasquatch encounters took place. Well, I've been there. I've been exactly where those Sasquatch encounters took place. And being a commercial fisherman, all my life, I was talking to locals, indigenous people, fellow fishermen, loggers, you name it. And I was always 10,000 questions. What do you know about Sasquatch? And, these people that live out in the bush, I'll tell you about Sasquatch. Just grab a seat and we'll have another coffee. Next thing you know, 2 hours later, I'm just like, holy, that guy's had a lot of encounters. And I've heard the truth.
That's the best part, right? Is asking, not being embarrassed or shy to ask 1,000 questions, because that's how the stories get told, and that's how we remember, and we keep passing it on so that people don't forget. One of the terms one of the terms I had read was calling Sasquatch the other tribe, but also the medicine keepers. That was another term.
Keepers of the medicine. Yeah.
Keepers of the medicine. Thank you.
Yeah. Keepers of the medicine. Sitonga. That's in the Omaha tribe language. Sitonga, keeper of the medicine. When I went down there, I was down there for twice. I've been down there. Once I was there for 2 weeks, and a lot of Sasquatch activity. And I teamed up with Lucas White. And then I met a medicine woman there, and she told me, well, kind of bad hip. You can see her hobbling like that after a big rainstorm. And she came to where the cabin campsite was I was staying at by myself. and there's a spigot, and she's going there with a bunch of empty containers and a young boy of about, I guess, maybe 8. And, held her. So I ran out, hey, ma'am, I'm so-and-so. Here, let me help you. And so I helped her with her water, put it back into her trunk. And Indian Reserve. She probably didn't have good water at her house. So anyway, I helped her. Mm-hmm. But as we started talking, I said, what do you know about the Sitonga, the Sasquatches here? The other night I saw 2 of them, a pregnant on the big male with a night vision FLIR scope across that field over there towards that house that looks like an igloo. And that little kid goes, oh, that's our house. We live there. And he goes, oh, you saw a big hairy man. And hairy man's all over here. I said, ma'am, I am a Sasquatch investigator, and I treat them with the greatest, utmost respect. I call them Chunakwa, the other tribe, the humans of the night. And right there, you can see I broke ice. She understood I was a respectful person towards Sasquatch. And she goes, Sitonga, keeper of the medicine, is what we call them. And I'm a medicine lady. I'm actually going here next week for a 3-week training program and harvest session. But she goes, I have a table on my yard. I pick medicinal plants from the root right to the leaves or buds, and I put them on the table, different species. And I put food out. At night, Sitonga comes, and they might pluck the roots or the buds or the bark or the inner stems, leaves, and leave it on the table, and everything push off or off to the side. And what's left there on that part of the season of the year tells me what's of a medicinal value. And then I have to figure out what for. And
that's fascinating.
Food. And she goes, that's how we shaman learn about the medicinal plants and remedies. We interact with Sitonga, the keepers of the medicine, the Sasquatch. And then it resonated. All the reports and readings I'd come across about shaman from Indian tribes disappearing for months, years at a time. And when they returned, they had the knowledge of the medicine from the forest, from the bush, from the water. Well, what they were doing is like I was. They were living out there with the land of the Sasquatch, their domain. And that's why when I went rogue, we hear of people going postal. Wife kicks them out. They can't see the kids. Courts order them. They have to pay so much a month. They can't see the children, yada, yada, yada. Next thing you know, snap, that human male goes. That's it.
Yeah, we just lost it a little bit there.
It's freezing.
Yeah, it glitched a wee bit. So, but you were talking about going rogue and going postal, that as humans we just snap. So that possibility, or is it the same?
That's like what a rogue Sasquatch is.
Yes.
A rogue Sasquatch is a Sasquatch that's gone postal. He snapped. And they're loners because they've been ousted from the family and clan. And they get bigger, more aggressive. And next thing you know, David Pilates is putting you on his volume of missing 411. That's because they came across a rogue Sasquatch. A lot of those people that are gone. Yeah.
So
beings, human beings.
Right. So people going missing. And yeah. And I guess that was a question that, when I was talking about this with friends, that was a question that they had, and actually with my dad. So my dad lives with my stepmom on a reserve outside of Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And I had gone up to visit, and he was telling me a story that some of the people from the reserve saw this over 7 foot tall bipedal hairy creature dragging the back end of a moose behind it.
Yeah.
And I do you think they'll bring me out there? If I ask nice, would they take me out? And he's like, do you want to get killed by angry Sasquatch? And I said, it would be an epic death, Dad. It would be an epic
Yeah.
death. He's like, you're crazy. You're just crazy. And ignorance on my part, I'm sure too, right? Like in not necessarily being respectful, but you know, there is those angry ones that will and attack.
But the chances of you going MIA because of a rogue Sasquatch, to not, especially if you have protection, bear spray, gun, if you can get one.
Yeah.
Flare
I
gun.
certainly wasn't worried about it, but my dad was.
Yeah.
My dad was more concerned than I was.
Investigating is nice. Though with me, I don't call it investigating. It's just going out in the bush. Like I had a 2-month fix when I was on the herring test fishing boat through March and April. So I'm good for another few months. But, I get batty every now and then and I just disappear and go into the bush. It's just, It's so peaceful out there. I'm not out there, now I got to do a lot of investigating. Everyone wants to go Sasquatch investigating with me. So friends to clients. So yeah, let's go.
Yeah. I would love for you to share a story that I heard you share about don't tease the Sasquatch, where you had covered yourself up with leaves and it was a young one that was coming in. It's a great story.
They're disrespecting me. They're stealing my apples and my garlic from my locked food box with the twist wire on it. So, and when we finally realized it wasn't a Sasquatch is doing that, I knew that it was time to pee up the fence post higher than the Sasquatch. You got to do that. You got to show dominance and that you're not afraid of anything. Once you show fear, they're going to capitalize on it. Any like that, especially. So my worker that was there, I told him, I said, you just stay in the cabin and don't you dare run out with that 30-30 and start shooting unless I tell you to run out and you make sure you see me before you point that gun and shoot. I was snuck out the window with my gun. I crawled along the bushes on the ground, but we'd been cutting trees down and raking up the forest debris. And out here on the coast, we have monsoon June, and then after that, it's pretty dry in July, August, into September, into early October. And then the monsoons show up in mid-October. So we're waiting for the mid-October monsoon so we can light these big piles of debris up and burn them without burning the forest, 250 acres of forest on the island down. But I strategically, at the mouth of the trail into the forest where our outhouse was in the interior of the island, I deliberately put a big pile of brown alder leaves, just like maple leaves kind of, but not as big. And that's what I crawled to. And I hid in there, lying on my, sitting there on my butt with my back against a tree. And I covered myself in leaves with my gun on my chest like this. And just before dark, that's when I went there. And sure enough, I'm looking through the forest and you can see that Sasquatch that I'd seen a few days earlier. That was what I called a teenager. It's tall, lanky. It's like a teenager. It's walking along the edge of the forest looking at our cabins. And when it gets to the trail where I'm sitting in that pile of leaves, it was for what they call an old skidder trail, when they used to use bulldozer cat machines to drag trees down from when they logged it back in 1927, because we know exactly when that island was logged. But anyway, it's like a ditch, but it's, it's the trail now, but it's like a 1.5 meters high. And the Sasquatch grabs with its left arm this alder tree, about maybe 10, 15 centimeters in diameter, and it uses it, steps down with its right leg into that trail, into that berm off the edge. And as it's looking at the back of my cabin, I guess maybe 50, 60 feet away, it's focused on that cabin. And all of a sudden I come popping out of the leaves and, hey, what are you doing? And that Sasquatch just looked at me. His eyes went big. You could tell I scared the bejesus out of him. And he pulled that tree and jumped up on the bank, and he's just like, ah, just so PO'd that I put the jig on him. I scared him, come out of those leaves, and that tree's snapping, there's leaves falling. I pull out of the leaves, I'm laughing. Turns and runs through the forest. And he wasn't being in stealth mode no more. He was cracking and breaking. But I just laughed like hell because I turned the table on the Sasquatch. And that's what you got to do if you want to get close to them. You got to out bush smart them, because I've lived in the bush half of my life. I know if I got a few tricks up my sleeves.
That's so fun. That's a fun story. So Colleen is asking, how will the Alberta wildfires affect the Sasquatch?
Not at all. They're not dumb like us hairless bipedal creatures. They're sitting there at daytime to find a place to sleep where the scouts can keep an eye on things for any threat to the family clan. And also, oh, look, there's smoke. Well, we better talk about this. Maybe that looks like that fire is coming where we are right now. Maybe we better go down this mountain or hill and go up the other one over there so the fire passes us by. And that's what they do. Here in British Columbia on the coast mountains, what they're doing is this time of the year, they're following the receding snow into the alpine. As the snow is receding, it's exposing dead animals that didn't make it off the mountain when the snows came in October, November. What we would call carrion. Every indigenous tribe of Sasquatch Island, North America, ate a carrion or a derivative, something derived from carrion to a certain extent. Do your history, study your anthropological side, the human tribes of North America and what they used to eat. But anyway, the Sasquatches are following that snow, and when they see the ravens and the eagles and the turkey vultures that come in the third week of April from the south, turkey vultures, they're looking for that high level carrion as well. So when all of a sudden you see the circling birds, Sasquatch goes up there, and lo and behold, being exposed from the snow now is a deer or a mountain goat or an elk or a bear or cougar or whatever. And that's what they eat. I've got numerous reports on that. And then when their snows are gone, and that alpine area explodes. As soon as the snow recedes, boom, plants just pop up like you wouldn't believe, more so than down here at sea level. And that's food for the ungulates, the deer, the mountain goat, the elk. And what are they doing this time of year? Fawn drop. Why are they fawn dropping up there? High production for milk from the nutrients that they eat, the grasses and the flowers and everything else. But they can all tell and hear for distances for any predator. Predators are up there, the wolves, the bears, the Sasquatch, the cougar, and that's where Sasquatches are. And then all of a sudden, as they're living up there, oh, there's a forest fire. Oh, they just watch it go by them, and they very seldom go into the alpine because the alpine's very green and lush. It doesn't burn. So the Sasquatches are safe up there. In Alberta, the Sasquatches know the fire season's coming. They're up in those mountains, when you look at reports on Sasquatch, and that's why Nordegg, where, Standing is located. Not going to say anything about that guy, but anyway, where he is.
There's a lot about their intelligence and their culture, like that they have a culture and language, and that we need to give them credit for being intelligent and their own community, in looking out for their own community as well.
That's what, if you're going to be a good Sasquatch investigator or enthusiast that's going to get close to them, you got to quit thinking like a human. Us humans, hairless one squad. You got to prove to yourself you have well-developed frontal lobes, and you can put two and two together, and accept that Sasquatch has forgotten more about the bush than we will ever know in every regard. They hate, despise us, loathe us, fear us. And Sasquatches have laws, very strict laws. They have language. They have culture. They can sing. They can hum. They have laws, very strict laws. And the reason why I emphasize that is right now we live in a world where we're scared of what's going to happen in Ukraine with Putin. We're scared of that crazy little guy in North Korea. And we're scared of Iran, who's trying to build some nuclear weapons. because fire, the ability as a species to evolve with the use of fire, got us, fusion or whatever they call it for splitting an atom and having an atomic bomb. That's fire. And that's why Sasquatches don't have fire, because they seen what fire has generated for us as a species. Towns and villages burning to the ground, forest fires caused by humans, guns, igniting gunpowder, and what that's caused. You can only imagine what it was like when the Sasquatches saw the Indian massacres by the Bluecoats, and they saw the rebel being put down by the Redcoats. And then all of a sudden, the Sasquatches saw the Civil War in the United States, and they instilled, we have laws, very strict laws, and we're going to make it even stricter. We are not going to use fire, because look at those humans, what the humans are doing with fire. And when we find in our investigations toys for children or shiny items way out in the forest, like in Omaha, where the Indian Reserve is, there's actually 3 there, but anyway, the southern one, Macy, Nebraska, my boots on the ground investigator, Lucas White, he found one of those crib toys with the spinny things, the bells, the squeakers, and all that, and all colorful. He found that a mile and a half out in the sticks. Tell me some kid carry that a mile and a half out in the sticks. No, ain't happening. There's rattlesnakes down there. And then he finds a bicycle with one training wheel removed, the kid's bike, 3 miles out in the bush. So you can just imagine as the Sasquatches see Tonga is coming into the Indian communities of the Omaha Indian Reserve, and there's 3 tribes down there. There's the Omaha down where I go in Macy, there's the Ho-Chunks and the Winnebagos, and they all feed the Sasquatches. They put what we put in a green box in the cities, recycle in our compost, they put in the bush behind us, so that Tonga doesn't come and bang the side of the house, doesn't just open their freezers and take food out from the shed and so forth. Everyone's feeding Tonga. So down there, the Sasquatches, they come into the communities for food at night. And, you can imagine a little Sasquatch, because all of a sudden goes, oh, look, a crib squeaky toy, and takes it. Daylight comes, they're a mile and a half in the bush now with his mama and others of his clan with their bellies after eating the human offerings, basically, and other human-produced proteins they got. Well, all of a sudden, the big male comes up and looks and slaps that toy out of the young Sasquatch's hand. We have laws, very strict laws. We don't take human stuff. And that's why we know in most areas, Sasquatches don't take our axes or our knives we leave outside. Just in a few rare occasions do we hear of axes and knives being taken from humans that leave them outside, or see a Sasquatch cutting a walrus in Nome, Alaska on the beach that's dead. And when they go there, one of the guys, when they went and did the follow-up, when they went up there in their quads, because only one guy saw the Sasquatch eating that walrus. When they got there, though, they noticed the back of the neck, a chunk had been cut out, and there was a knife. And one of the guys goes, "That's my knife. That was on my cleaning table and by my smokehouse last week. I was wondering where it went." The Sasquatch, there is our evidence that the Sasquatch went into the guy's back house was where fish would allow advantage of human-produced protein, and then took the human knife, and miles later, a few days later, uses that knife to cut the back of a washed-up dead walrus on the beach just north of Nome. So that's what I mean by ingenuity as a Sasquatch investigator. I could see it through your body language that you're like, wow, man, this Indian really knows his stuff. He's putting all 2 and 2 together. That's what I mean by it being a Sasquatch investigator enthusiast. When you want to try to get close to Sasquatch or get a better understanding, you got to make sure you get both those cylinders called frontal lobes firing in unison. Otherwise, you're never going to get close to them.
And going where it's scary, going where it's uncomfortable, like why we don't see their home? Like, why haven't we found a home or a hut or any of the, because they're somewhere that it's hard to get to on purpose. Like,
No, I wouldn't say that. We've found enough
think
caves
so?
and under overhangs to know they're there.
Right, but
We know
not
the
too many
reports of
people are gonna,
Sasquatch using.
I would think not too many people want to venture into a cave. Like, you have to be the brave one or the crazy, one or the other, however you want to say it, to like put your head inside a cave.
Well, that's where someone right
It's where they're
now
going to
thinking
be.
about being a Sasquatch investigator, avid enthusiast, to grow a set real fast. Otherwise, you stay
Exactly.
home a
You have,
greeter mark,
you have to
because
go
the
where
bush
it's
is a scary
scary.
place.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to go where it's scary.
No, it's not scary. I just it's scary when you got a 12 gauge with you.
Right. Or your grandpa or Tom. But it's not so scary.
Someone with a gun.
But you hear lots of people commenting, like, tree
What's
structures and
some
all
bush
that kind of
advice?
stuff. Sorry?
Tree structures do not retain heat. Wind whistles through them. Water goes through them. Snow goes through them. There's absolutely nothing for making a Sasquatch comfortable in 99% of the tree structures we see. That being said, if you want to know Sasquatch, then go to your local Indians and study them at an anthropological level. Meet with them even and talk with them and interact with them if you're not indigenous. And when you read into the indigenous people, you'll find that most of the tribes practiced female blood is taboo, and no way am I going near that. That is voodoo, because I'm a male, I'm a hunter, and if I get anywhere near a menstruating woman, or I smell it or see it, or God forbid it touches me, or I go near a woman giving birth, because it's such an honor, a gift from the Creator for a human to do, and I see it, or I hear the birthing process as a male, or I get that blood on me, God forbid, the mumbo jumbo mojo of it takes the ability to hunt and something happen. So that's every tribe in North America. So the Indians would have birthing trees that were told to the men, you don't go over there and then down that area. That's where our birthing tree is. You don't go up there. That's where our birthing hut is. Or someone's from a neighboring tribe, or they haven't got the message, and all of a sudden he's out there hunting, and all of a sudden he's using the wind to his advantage, because got to walk into the wind. And as he's going, all of a sudden it's like, oh geez, there's a tree with a bunch of poles leaning against it.
Right.
That's either that birthing tree or that's a menstruating hut. Better get the hell out of here. So he goes way around it and stays upwind of it and doesn't dare go downwind of that female blood place. That's what tree structures are. There's Sasquatch birthing places and menstrual areas for the females. The other tribe, the perfect human, the human of the night, they're just another indigenous tribe. And study indigenous tribes prior to contact different times, then you can say, that's what a tree structure is. And then waste your time with tree structures. Number one, if you're a man, you're not supposed to be near them. Number two, what are you looking at the tree structure for? That tree peeking at you and looking at you.
Right.
Use the wind. Use your eyes. Use your frontal lobes.
I'm going to start saying that a lot. Use your frontal lobe. It's brilliant. It's brilliant.
TOs people.
Well, sometimes you need to do that to people. Push them a little bit. Could you talk to me or share with our listeners?
You have to.
Right? I agree. Can you share about smallpox? I heard you talking about this as well too, and I found that really fascinating. When you were talking about smallpox, and
yeah, it just happened out of the blue one time when I was talking to someone about Sasquatches. Was a native individual from the Haida First Nation what was called Queen Charlotte Islands off North Coast, British Columbia. Well, it's called Haida Gwaii now, the proper name. It's a homeland of the tribes, the Masset and others. But he just said, oh yeah, I remember my grandfather talking about how when they're living down in smallpox was rampant through there. Everyone was a bit sick with it. And all of a sudden called, and the other chiefs of the village were called to come to the edge of the forest. And there were the Gogih, the Sasquatches, standing there, holding in their arms their infants and young smallpox, dragging the other clan members covered in smallpox. And they were looking at us and, making their... And then the chiefs said, go in the houses, boys, and grab our sick. And our people came out with our sick, and the Sasquatches realized then, Gogih, that we too are covered in smallpox. We don't know how to cure it. It's an illness, comprehension or clue how to treat. And the Sasquatches just hung their heads, turned, and forest. He said, that's what they're coming into our communities now. And once I heard that, and I knew that smallpox was passed to the Sasquatches, then right there I said, they are human. It's another green flag telling us that Sasquatches are just human, if we can pass our diseases back and forth. So when I do my interviews with people, especially the elders, native people and that, I ask about what do they know about Sasquatches having smallpox, tuberculosis, Spanish flu, influenza of any sort. And
COVID.
They tell me their reports if they remember them. So we do know, like just recently, and then I believe someone has it on, you hear that coughing Sasquatch. This is like 5 years ago or beyond, before COVID. And, that Sasquatch was coughing. So you knew it was sick. And then that's why when COVID came, I got word to my fellow American Indian tribe that I, modern day moccasin telegraph, Facebook Messenger, and Facebook private groups. Right. I got word out that we need to tell our local Sasquatches that we're here sharing our homelands because it's their homeland, or we're interacting with them at a certain level, because a lot of native tribes are interacting with Sasquatch. They're just not telling anyone, but they're telling me, some of them. So anyway, I said, we got to get word to the Sasquatches that we're sick again. We got COVID coming here. So I recommend that we do the magic number of 4. And for the indigenous tribes, we take 4 big sticks that we can just break over our heads and our arms. They make a loud crack like Sasquatches do, tree breaking. And we go outside an hour before dark, put our 4 branches in the ground so they the 4. And we take one and we grab it and we walk around. We start coughing and retching like we got COVID. And then we crack, go back into our house or stop for a while. And as sun goes down and it starts to get twilight, do the coughing and hacking, walking with the stick, and then raise it over your head and break it again. Right dark, do it again. 45 minutes, an hour into dark, do it the 4th time, and then leave. Pass the message on to your local Sasquatches that COVID's here and we're sick again as a species, and we don't want you guys to get it. In many tribal areas, the Sasquatches took the warning and got the hell out of Dodge. Got away from the Indian reserves. Quit taking the food that was being offered in the backyards by the Indian people. And just recently, one of the reports came in and goes, oh, they finally returned. And they're back again. So I'll give you some more reports as they come in. So interaction between Sasquatch and humans, there always has been. The native people. And that's why Sasquatch Island, my group and everything, is all about educating people that if you want to know about Sasquatch, go meet your local Indians. Bring them a gift. Bring them some food. Bring them some tobacco. Bring them a Tim Hortons gift card in Canada, bring Starbucks gift card in both countries, and some tobacco, because that's our way. And ask them. I would like to investigate Sasquatch in the area I live in, which is your tribal traditional territories. I'd like to protocol and get permission from you. What are your protocols? And they might just say, okay, we don't want you here or this. You have an interaction from human to human on how to respect Sasquatch, but what you're doing is how to respect each other. Because there is really no communication between the white people, sorry, no offense, and the Indians in a lot of areas. And that's what we need to increase. We need to increase that cooperation. Like you said earlier, no, we're never going to have that utopian society, but at least we can curtail being poo-tossing hairless apes and start respecting one another like Sasquatch respects us. And that's the teaching of Sasquatch. So your group about spirituality.
Recognizing that we haven't asked the questions and we haven't engaged and engaging.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of years ago or 2 years ago in Forks, Washington, or last year in Forks, Washington. No, 2 years ago, Forks, Washington. Anyway, we had a conference there. And Queen Woo Woo was with King Woo Woo. And when I was talking in the auditorium, Queen Woo Woo got up and she just said, "You're so disrespectful because you're not spiritual when it comes to Sasquatch." Oh, I ripped her a new one from hell to sundown, because I am spiritual, because I recognize Sasquatch. Yes, Sasquatch is very spiritual. What is spirituality? It's about trying to keep ourselves on a righteous, ethical, loving, caring, human path. And then when we look at Sasquatch, we have to look at Sasquatch as the last vestige of something that was perfect and pure, where we hear the stories of what it was like when there was so much salmon, when we hear the stories up in Northwest Territories about when there were so many caribou, and we hear the stories all over the place about when there were so many buffalo and so many this, and now we're this like this, and too many humans and this and that, and warfare and fighting, animosity, overtaxation. But we go and reflect back to the 1970s, and it's in Sasquatch Island. I put that commercial there from the 1970s where this Indian in buckskin, who is actually an Italian, paddles in urban environment in his birch bark canoe. He sees the traffic jams, the effluent being dumped into the rivers and poisoning it, the urban sprawl and smoke coming out of fat. And I think it was a guy throws in bucket.
Yeah, it just glitched a wee bit again. Just hang tight a second and we'll see if it there you go.
That commercial, like a wildfire, environmentalism, the green movement, Greenpeace, and everything else, where we are now at a level where there's too many, because the worst to the indigenous people is the environmentalist that is an Indian. That's, just the way it is, because they're subjecting us by stopping everything and no balance, so that we have poverty in our Indian reserves, and we have in Canada and the US, based on per capita numbers, measurements, we have a higher death rate by suicide, alcohol, and drug addiction, and the negativity from poverty, like wife beating and child molestation, far higher than the Canada or US norm, because people are getting shut down with their pipeline projects, their forestry, their fish farming, and the list goes on because of environmentalism getting too extreme. Everything's about harmony and balance. Right. But if we look at Sasquatch, he's that modern day Indian in buckskin. They're crying as they look at us and what we're doing to the environment. Sasquatch, and that's why I'm so adamant that we need conclusive proof of the existence of Sasquatch. And that's why the government fights so hard and spends so many millions to cover it up. Because once they find out there's a Sasquatch, well, United States will have their third recognized indigenous tribe. Inuit in Alaska, North American Indians, and Sasquatch. Canada will have their fourth indigenous tribe. Inuit in the Arctic, First Nations throughout, Métis that just got recognized, and the fourth tribe will be Sasquatch. And we know what the Department of Indian Affairs in 2 countries spends on indigenous people per year. So there's a reason why the government doesn't want the conclusive proof of the existence of Sasquatch, because we look back on what happened in the 1990s with the marbled murrelet and the spotted owl here in the Pacific Northwest of California, Oregon, Washington, British Columbia, Alberta, and Alaska. Hundreds of millions of hectares of forest land was taken off the table for logging, resource extraction, urban sprawl development because of supposed endangered species, spotted owls and marbled murrelets. Can you imagine what it's going to be like when we have conclusive proof of the existence of Sasquatch? So to us, we need to identify Sasquatch and recognize what they are. I say, under speculation and from experience, that they're just humans. DNA and blood samples and everything will tell us that, yes, they are this or that. But regardless, they will be recognized. And in turn, we will see hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hectares of lands and forests and waterways, lake shores, and the list goes on, protected. So we can study them and come up with, okay, we can only log at this level. We can put pipelines through, but we see like the pipeline in Alaska they did in the 70s, it's got to be so many meters high so the Sasquatches can migrate underneath. Or we got to do like our highways where we learned we need to build animal overpass over our freeways and fence our free vehicle traffic, and our trains don't kill all the animals and obliterate them to extinction. So that's all about the harmonies. And that Sasquatch is so spiritual to us as a species. They are the great spirit. They are our last vestige to something that is perfect and pure and what we need to get back on path to.
Do you feel that how they've been connecting is do you feel how they've been connecting with us all, like, and giving those signs and connecting is encouraging that, though, like trying to push people to understand them and make that connection? Or do you feel it's trying to push people away?
The law is very
no
strict
real
laws.
crisp, clear picture, right?
Yeah. So that being, they have laws, very strict laws. I've been taught by the Omaha tribes members that I've interacted with, and not Red Squatch, and I don't work with them. But anyway, what I've been taught in that, I put that into equating reason, rhyme into what's going on with the Sasquatch as I investigate. And why they don't come sit there and interact with them, Fossey, Jane Goodall, interaction, studying, research, and interaction. They have laws. Maybe one of their main laws is he's called a hairless bipedal creature. You stick around here. A urban environment, because laws change, and we've known in 19, I guess, last 15 years, at the urban edge, coming in at night, our orchards, our grain life, food dishes left out, food being offered to them in some cases.
Right.
Investigating of urban, what I call it urban edge Sasquatch.
It just weave it on you again.
Laws very,
yeah.
There, back again.
Now you're back. Now you're back. So
there. I can hear you.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
No audio yet. There.
So where can people find you? Where can they learn more about what you're doing, what you have to offer? Where can they find you?
Sasquatch Island on Facebook, Sasquatch Island YouTube channel. Seasons of the Sasquatch is another one, but I don't post there very much. But the website as well. And Google my name, Thomas Sewid. Yeah, there's some skeletons that'll come out of the internet, but whatever. I did it in the past. I own it. I did it. It was a mistake, but whatever. And not criminal though, so don't worry about that. But yeah, just Google my name and FNX Network for it's a First Nations North America network on the internet. And you go there and you search Aboriginal Adventures. And you'll see my TV show I used to do. Sign my contracts and everything. I'll be doing a First Nation North American Indian-based Sasquatch series throughout North America in the near future. We're just everything's coming together. I just can't say any more than that. That's all I can say.
I'm excited.
Got a P1000 Nikon, and I'm trying to produce what I can, but my wife, who's my editor, she's busy working again. She got bored with retirement, and I don't know how to edit. But I'll do what I can with YouTube. I'll post videos and that. And other way is just white man's magic.
Well,
internet.
I appreciate you coming on the show, and I know I was just so grateful that you were able to come on today. So I just wanted to thank you and let you know how much I appreciated you educating everybody today, educating us. And I hope that I can have you back on, because I would like to talk about the little people we didn't get to talk about, Wild Woman of the Woods, some ghost stories. There's lots still that
I know your video. I'll bring out the masks and show you as we talk.
I would love that. Yeah, no, it's been great. Thank you. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in to the show. And a big shout out to the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Network. And, join us next week. And I look forward to having you back on the show.
Thank you very, very much. Hello.
You've been listening to Spirit Switchboard with host Kerrilynn Shelhorn on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 New Orleans.